Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new The Changemaking podcast with Chloé Messdaghi. Each episode will introduce an area of technology that needs work and highlight the changemakers working on it. Join Chloé and guests as they tap into their passion about equity and rights for all. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of ITSP Magazine's The Changemaking podcast. My name is Chloé Messdaghi, and I am your host today. And today we are joined by Veda Woods, who is the founder of Protect Us Kids Foundation. Veda, welcome.
Thank you so much, Chloé. Happy to be here.
I am so thrilled to learn about your organization and to also spread the love of it. Before we begin, can you tell us a little bit about what led you to forming the Protect Us Kids Foundation?
Well, being a young person growing up on the inner city of the south side of Chicago, I was exposed to quite a few things socially within my environment, and that kind of spurred my interest as I got older of trying to figure out ways on how I could actually help change some of the challenges and the social issues that were happening in not just communities like Chicago, but similar communities all over the world. And it just so happened, I've always been an individual that was interested in technology, the arts, always trying to figure out how to leverage technology on ways to solve problems. And as I went throughout my career into what this thing we now know of as cybersecurity, I thought about how I could actually apply the principles of cyber, which is always about protecting those most invaluable assets, how I could actually apply that to how to protect people, and specifically young people who look like me or were represented like myself in similar communities in the States here and around the world. And it just so happened early in my career, I landed a role at the Federal Bureau of Investigations as a data analyst. And I asked if I could walk around and visit some of the what they call squads. And I happened to stumble across the squad within the office that was focused on child exploitation on the internet. And it just so happened some of the cases that they were working on reflected communities like mine. As a matter of fact, one of them reflected the south side of Chicago, and it was focused on people exploiting children on Craigslist, believe it or not. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're actually leveraging technology to do things like that. I need to understand how this actually occurs so that I can, join the good fight and to help that. And that's really what kind of spurred the birth of Protect Us Kids. I even still have the little piece of paper where I did a little outline. And it was rather easy because, like I said, I'm from that community, but I never thought that it would kind of take off to where it has now.
Love it. So tell me a little bit about the foundation, Protect Us Kids.
Well, Protect Us Kids is a 501c3 nonprofit located in Washington, D.C., and it's really focused on protecting young people worldwide from any type of exploitative behavior or those young people that may be indirectly or directly impacted by child sexual exploitation and or online child commercial sex trafficking. Although our overall goal is always to protect all youth, we do have a special interest in those young people that are living in underserved, rural, and marginalized areas who may be more susceptible to predatory maneuvers.
So what are some of the initiatives that Protect Us Kids are doing right now?
I think the biggest, most impactful, and probably the readily apparent mission is our awareness. We participate with communities within various regions of the world with young people to actually provide awareness on how they can protect themselves online from things such as cyberbullying, online child enticement, as well as mental health, believe it or not. And we have a youth life program where the young people actually, they are the ones who come up with the ideas and the topics that they feel are relevant and current. And we basically provide the infrastructure to provide them a voice. And so we do a lot of efforts with areas such as in the Caribbean. We have grassroots efforts in Bangladesh, India. We are right now focusing on Sierra Leone, as a matter of fact, to also provide awareness and actually have a joint effort towards developing a podcast as well. The young people want to do a podcast. And so that's probably the most impactful piece that you can see of Protect Us Kids is on the awareness front. Also because it's the most easily accepted, irrespective of where communities are in the world, because they all value education. And so it's very important for us to be able to provide that information. Other areas that Protect Us Kids focuses on is on the background. And so we have a 3-pillar approach. We partner with academia, seeking to serve as the clients for graduate school populations capstone projects. As you know, there's a lot of information out there and numbers out there regarding human trafficking, but those numbers are kind of all over the place and practically non-existent for the communities that we serve. And so we wish to provide the subject matter expertise in terms of the particular case studies of which we are interested in actually having some research done. And the graduate school population is able to provide that validated research. The graduate students can actually work on something very interesting and cool in support of understanding how you can leverage cyber for social good. And the academic institutions have an opportunity to also be able to attract interdisciplinary students who otherwise may not necessarily have had an interest in cyber, but definitely would have an interest, especially when they see how you can actually solve worldwide problems. Other areas where we partner is in regards to the health affairs, as specifically mental and behavioral health. We look at cybersecurity as being an extension, honestly, of our social consciousness. And so it's very important for us to understand that this is a human issue, and working with mental and behavioral health enables us to understand what's actually happening in a community and what type of avenues that we need to take in terms of tailoring our curriculum so that it's more impactful and it resonates more easily with the youth within the community. So we like to work very closely with mental and behavioral health. And lastly, we work very closely with the intelligence community and law enforcement, as well as other nonprofit organizations and technology organizations that are developing some interesting technologies to identify perpetrators on the web. We focus on providing some rather unique indicators based on our work with mental and behavioral health entities, as well as our work within the community. We feel that we can provide them a different perspective in support of their investigations, and also just providing a different lens to a community that's otherwise pretty much hidden in plain sight. And by working across all of those pillars really makes up a lot of the work that we do at Protect Us Kids.
The one thing that I have to admit that was really striking on your website was talking about how boys make up 50% of the sex traffic victims in the US, and that women make up as buyers and traffickers as well. I think that's one of the things that we don't talk about enough, is that this is not just a girls' situation, it's actually boys too. And Absolutely. That women participate in the trafficking. I mean, when you came across that statistic, was it something shocking to you, or was that something like you kind of already knew, but you're glad that the facts are out there now?
I don't think it's shocking. I think it may be shocking to other groups. Again, the demographic that we serve, there's quite a lot of things that occur because those populations are vulnerable, right? And so because there are a lack of resources and support, more often than not, when you take away the basic human needs, it's not really surprising the level of issues that actually can occur in respect to some of the exploitative behavior and abusive behavior that you're witnessing. It just so happens that technology kind of peels the layers back so that you can see. But a lot of this stuff has been going on since the beginning of time, unfortunately. Seeing, in terms of the statistics that you brought about women and boys, again, it's those entities that are vulnerable, in also understanding that it tends to be individuals that are close, especially when it comes to children. There tend to be individuals that are close to those children, right? And so it's not necessarily always thought of as, someone coming from the outside that's, abusing or exploiting these children in order to have access to a child, especially in those type of situations. There's normally trusted relationships, whether it's direct family members, guardians, parents, teachers, people who are in trusted positions of authority, neighbors. It's typically very often those trusted relationships where we see these types of abuses that occur. So it wasn't so much as surprising as it is understanding that how vast the type of access an individual can actually gain by leveraging technology. I think that was really surprising in terms of the breadth of the amount of abuse that can occur using technology.
Well, yeah, one of the most interesting situations is when working with kids that have been like sex trafficked, they themselves don't see themselves as a victim. It's like a part of them is shame, or it's disconnected, they're on survival mode. So what does your organization do on these kind of cases, especially when it comes to mental health, for them to accept the survival mode and start working through that trauma?
I think you chose the right word, survivor. For the children that we interact with, they don't necessarily see themselves as being trafficked. They are simply surviving based on the socioeconomic circumstances in where they live. And so there's not this thing of being trafficked. It's more so a thing of trying to survive. And so one of the key differentiators of Protect Us Kids that is very different perhaps than from others is that we focus on the peer-to-peer model where the young people talk to young people. And so we tend to be the listening ear and also the fact checker. So making sure that we are dropping in the appropriate and factual information, but facilitating the discussion so that the young people have an opportunity to have a voice. And that's what's different, right? As much as we want to think that we are social on social media, unfortunately, we've become antisocial. And our young people have a hard time, or people in general, not just young people, but people have had a hard time with simply having face-to-face direct conversations with people. And with our young people, they definitely are used to and more comfortable with leveraging technology, using emoticons to express themselves, and really kind of operating in this very much isolated realm, right? That feels like it has so many people around them. The challenge with that is that young people, especially the ones that are under the age of 17, cognitively, they're still developing in support, of their thought processes and how they reason. And unfortunately, we've created this environment where young people really don't necessarily have any guidance at all, and how they feel and the things that they encounter. They have to make decisions, and a lot of these decisions are adult decisions. And that's almost impossible for them to be able to differentiate, right? Because they're still children themselves. And so we've provided this avenue, you can call it a virtual safe haven, for young people to have an opportunity to talk about anything that they wish to talk about, not to feel shamed, but also to discuss some of the problems and some of the solutions, right, that they come up with. Because as you know, young people are very smart. You're only a child a very short period of time in your adult life, your overall lifespan of being a person, rather. And so during these times of when I think you're at your most creative, You can actually have young people come up with some amazing solutions and provide some thought leadership on current events and things that they feel are important to them. And we provide that platform for them. In parallel to that, that's very rehabilitative to have a support system, right? And a support system where you can actually, although you may not be face to face with that person, you can be in the forum, and we leverage video conferencing and webinars and sessions and the like. But we want to make sure that they have that interaction with not just, young people that are within their region, but around the world. Because truth be told, a lot of the challenges that young people face, irrespective of where they come, they're all the same, right? They want to feel loved, protected, respected, and accepted. And that is something that is tried and true, irrespective of where a child comes from. It's just that sometimes being on the internet, there is a false sense of meeting those needs from others who may actually are out there to do them harm and not necessarily to provide support in those areas.
One of the things I've noticed when doing like community work around this area is that those that went through that trauma and they work through their trauma, sometimes they want to volunteer and provide advisement and get involved. Do you ever see cases like that within the org?
Oh, all the time. All the time. We have people who are anonymous, white hackers who, are within the community on the chat forums and the like, providing, solutions and things like that, open source development. But more often than not, they want to volunteer because they've been impacted by some type of trauma that is similar in nature. In terms of what Protect Us Kids Foundation mission is. We also have a lot of young people that are a little bit older that actually were directly impacted when they were in their preteen stages, and they didn't understand, how to navigate and get around a lot of the issues that they encountered. And so they have a strong interest in making sure that they can provide guidance and support to other young people so that they can prevent themselves from falling victim to a lot of the grooming that actually occurs online. I think the most powerful aspect of the overall approach that we're taking is that the human factor is very much, and I mentioned this before, the foundation of everything. And so the people come to Protect Us Kids and want to volunteer because they can relate, and it's a human emotion that's evoked from that, right? And more often than not, whether it's positive because they want to nurture and provide support to other young people, it's the long-lasting impacts of the things that weren't so positive that they encountered in their life, leveraging technology that doesn't necessarily go away just because you're off of technology. Right? It affects how you speak to people, it affects how you express yourself. It affects even in terms of what type of job you may want to take or how much information you want to disclose about yourself because of events that may have happened to you inadvertently negative online when you were younger. And trying to cope and kind of get past those things is hard, right? And so we get a lot of people and I won't say a lot, but we get a good portion of folks that want to volunteer, adults and children alike, because they've had some type of experience, if not directly, they have a family member or a friend within their community that they know that were impacted by this type of behavior. So they definitely wanted to join Protect Us Kids to help.
Yeah, I think one of the scariest things that I remember reading about is that with kids, they get lured so easily because they feel special. The person brings them in and makes them feel like they're like the only one, that they're incredibly special, and it sucks them in. And then it becomes kind of like an abusive relationship where they start making demands on them, but then they treat them nice, and then they make demands and then treat them nice. It's like this back and forth. And a lot of people always think that once they like weed them in, right, that it's not kind of that abusive relationship, that it's like all negative suddenly. And that's not the case. So it makes it even harder to break away from that. situation. And I'm curious, like, how do you deal with these kind of cases in sense, because that does a number on someone.
It does. And, there's never really an isolated incident. Because when you think about how we've opened up this, I call it Pandora's box, because it really is, technology is awesome. You can do so many things efficiently, faster, quicker. You can gain access to so many different things. But I don't think anyone thought that individuals would start looking at this in terms of gaining access, right, to children. And it is very much psychological, and it does play a part in terms of what we do on a day-to-day. Our lives are intertwined from the virtual and the physical space. And I always tell people, if you think it's challenging for an adult to understand the difference between reality and fantasy, how hard do you think it is for a kid? Especially a child that's kind of been born into this, right? It's almost impossible. And so in terms of even how you should behave online, we don't necessarily teach children kindness and how to treat people online. Hopefully you expect or assume that that's something that's taught at home, right? That you should be kind to others. You should allow people to have an opportunity to speak and provide their thoughts without retribution. You should allow people to be creative and innovative, and it's okay to be different. All of these things that perhaps may be written somewhere, technology just and social media enables a person to, for some reason, to feel like they're a lot freer in their expression. And that freedom of expression is great. But whenever you have something where everything goes, there's bound to be another group that's impacted negatively, right? Because we're not necessarily thinking about how thoughtful we should be or the impacts of our actions that we take. And so with young people, it's a very immersive space, right? To be a kid right now. You can express yourselves and have thoughts about things to the masses, to millions of followers and friends, but you can be the loneliest person, right? In terms of your physical space, because you're not even able to talk to those closest to you, your family members or your friends, but you feel like you can find that acceptance online. And so it's a very confusing, challenging space that's why it's so important to protect as kids focuses so much on bridging the gap between mental health, academia, and intelligence and law enforcement. It's very, very important to do that because this is not a siloed problem. It's very much an intertwined challenge that we have right now in terms of being able to provide a support system where your support system is anonymous. You can't really pinpoint it, but you can pretty much create an environment in a world to kind of fit whatever you want. And there's no boundaries with it. And so young people don't necessarily understand how to deal with those different emotions. And you talked about that rather eloquently in terms of the back and forth, right? It's a play on the emotions. It's a play on the most vulnerable aspects of the human condition. And you can do that simply by being on the net, being on the mobile device, right? You never have to step foot in a person's house or anything like that, but you can have these chat conversations and just simply scan a chat room, identify someone that has an interesting social handle, and get pretty much as much information as you want in terms of where that person's state of mind is at a snapshot of time, and immediately go in and start having a conversation. And before you know it, you've built a relationship that can last a day, 2 weeks, for years. We're never, ever meeting that individual, right? And that level of trust and bond that you can form is powerful. And it's extremely powerful when it comes to children. So yes, it's a very challenging environment, but our partnership with mental and behavioral health to understand there's a lot of efforts that are starting to come underway On our board, we have individuals that are oh my goodness, just moving at the speed of light in terms of how they are looking at technology and how technology has had an impact on mental health and what does that look like. One of our board members, Dr. Akira Olson, is very much tied into really understanding the impact in respect to technology and what that looks like from a child's perspective, right? And how they're using that technology and the impact it has on them from traumatic events that are occurring online. How does that impact that child? And how do you provide rehabilitative services to a child that has been exploited online? And what is the impact that it has on our society as we see more and more cases of this type of abuse that's honestly not really even reported, right? A lot of the abuse occurs in silence. And so that's a huge challenge, and it's going to require a collective effort amongst all the parties that I mentioned, which is one of the reasons why Protect Us Kids exists, is to help keep those conversations going, and most importantly, keep the path open for young people to have a voice, because they really have the answers to the questions that we have. We have a tendency of speaking for them, and that actually silences them quite a bit, right? So they start forming their own worlds virtually to have that voice. And so what we want to do is make sure that we create that platform for them so that they can provide the solutions to like I said, a lot of the problems that we're seeing that are out there right now.
So, Veda, how can companies help, and how can individuals that are listening help support your mission?
Our biggest thing right now are corporate sponsors. We have done so much. A rather well-established nonprofit gave us the biggest compliment. They said, you guys are rather unique. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you've managed to spread globally and reach so many young people globally. It's like amazing what you've done. But from a capital standpoint, it's rather small. And I laughed and I said, trust me, we're very much aware of that. And there's so much more that we can do, but it's going to definitely require corporate sponsors and people who understand it and are interested in terms of the research. There's a lot of research that we wish to conduct in this space because, again, it's virtually non-existent. And also the technology platforms that are really required in order for us to scale requires quite a bit of investment as well. Some of that, the help from companies is not always monetary. The partnership piece is critical for Protect Us Kids being able to be successful in our mission. And so those avenues in terms of supporting us in so that we can have valid access to open source data, right? That we can leverage to be able to aggregate that information up, to be able to accurately tell the stories that a few of them that I mentioned before, having access to those organizations that have developed resources in terms of hotlines and data entry points for individuals to report. We would like to be able to provide a front-end access to that so that we can indeed create this virtual safe haven that I kind of talked about a little bit before. It's going to require partnerships amongst quite a few organizations. And then I think probably another avenue is having support systems from those within the legal realm. We are a global organization. And so just the amount of rigor around privacy and child protection laws is massive, especially when you look at it on a global scale. So any type of pro bono or in-kind donation in terms of providing us support from a legal front is greatly appreciated, because legally those laws change based on region. And international laws change and vary greatly, just depending on the time, right, as time moves on. And so we definitely would love to have some legal pro bono work as well to help us craft and understand this virtual safe haven that we want to create to make sure it's safe. But it also protects the interests of all individuals involved. So yeah, we have a lot of big asks for Protect Us Kids, but we're hopeful. And we believe in these kids, and we know this is the right thing to do. We just hope that others feel the same.
I wouldn't say like big ass. I would say like this is something we need to do. Like
Absolutely.
Everyone should get involved. Like this should not happen anymore.
Exactly.
It's disturbing on every single level. No one should go through this. And
Absolutely.
that trauma just carries on for the rest of their lives. And if we can do anything that we can to reduce that from happening, or at least provide the resources to help these people, get through the survival mode, work through the trauma, so then they can have a wonderful life ahead. Veda, thank you so much for joining me today and talking about Protect Us Kids Foundation. If you have any information, if anyone has any questions, I would say feel free to reach out to Veda Woods on LinkedIn or send an email to Protect Us Kids. Their website is protect-us-kids.org. The link will also be posted underneath this podcast episode. So thank you, Veda, for joining us, and everyone, please stay safe. And I look forward to tuning in and being with you all very soon with another wonderful guest.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Changemaking podcast with Chloé Messdaghi. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.